Berry, and it's a great pleasure for me today to introduce two buddies who I haven't seen in person for quite some time, but we're great to be able to join in this conversation today online. First of all, Peter Merrett. Peter's now a friend and a colleague, but he once upon a time was a client. And that's where I first came across his expertise in the employee and customer experience area. Paul is also a friend, but he's still a client. Going back now, perhaps for the last maybe a decade, Paul, it probably is.
10 years, I'd say.
Yeah, and so we've had a lot of fun together. Once upon a time when Peter was still my client, I remember doing a presentation for Paul's workplace, and of which Peter was involved. Peter was also the organizer, and it was to do with helping Paul's organisation in the employee experience area. And I think we had our great friend from the UK, Derek Williams, from the WOW Awards. So that might be a good place to start, gentlemen, because here today we're going to talk about the employee experience, the customer experience, and maybe what's new because of COVID, and perhaps what's coming, in a, dare we say, post-COVID world. So it's good to be with you, gents.
Yeah, you too.
Where do we start?
Let's go right to the beginning.
Okay.
I was just thinking about the WOW Awards the other day, actually, because it was such a simple and effective concept. This idea of immediate recognition for employees doing a great thing, being themselves and in the service of a customer, and it was that immediate, in the moment recognition. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, there wasn't even a monetary or physical reward attached to it. It was literally just I really respect what you just did for that customer moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've just hit the bullseye there, where so many people still get confused with the importance and the power of recognition versus reward. So sometimes I think we can get the wrong judgment where we think to make someone feel special or appreciated, we need to give them a monetary gift or a token gesture or gift, whereas the most important thing, if you think the deepest human desire is to feel appreciated and for that feeling of gratitude in all of its humble essence. That's what that's what I love about the WOW Awards. It's all it is capturing customer feedback and giving people great recognition for whatever it is that they've done. So it's the power of thank you.
The theme for that day, I was going to just remind our viewers that the theme for that day all those years ago was catching people doing things right.
Yeah.
So that kind of summarizes, doesn't it?
What a great place to focus your energy, because there's a hell of a lot of energy that goes into catching people doing things wrong. I know which culture I'd prefer to live in, I'm sure.
Yeah, working with an organisation at the moment where we've got a culture of catching people doing things right, and we have our own FC rewards program behind that. But the culture in this organisation is unfortunately walking around with a clipboard, catching people doing the wrong thing. And so we've got this little bit of a clash of cultures at the moment going on where our people aren't used to that approach.
It's pervasive, isn't it, when you think about it? I think the great, I'd say the great metaphor or the great example is the nightly news, because it's pretty much 17 minutes of bad news and then sport, and then the weather, which in my part of the world,
depending on which team you follow, the sport might be bad news as well.
Well, that's right. But yeah, I'm staggered that after 30 years plus of doing this work, that the majority of workplaces still don't get that it's catching people doing things right means they'll continue to do things right, and they'll also find ways to be innovative in doing it. Because I believe we're all born innovative, and yet we have all these workplaces where, you know, the management's still in vogue. Why is beyond me, because managing people to me has always been an oxymoron. You know, we need to empower them and then not get in their way. That's to me is the trick. But there are still some. In fact, most. I think the good news, Peter, I think you concur. The good news is over my working lifetime, it has got better, but it's still the minority who understand the employee customer experience.
Yeah, fully. And, you know, I think so much time and energy is spent, and this goes back to my own reflection of living in my own corporate positions that I left a few years ago. But there's such a focus on everything that's happening tomorrow and the chase of what we're doing, what's coming up in the future, that we continuously miss the moment of now. And gratitude lives in the moment of now. And sometimes the smallest gesture, when we notice someone who does something really good and we miss the moment of saying thank you or personally acknowledging their good work.
I'd like to savor that for a moment, if I could. That line you just said, Peter, gratitude lives in the moment of now.
Sure does, yeah. You know, and if you imagine, you know, you've just seen Fred the cleaner do a really great job with something. If we left it till tomorrow or the end of the month or the quarterly team gathering or the town hall meeting or whatever it is that we do, the moment is gone. And here lies the core of culture. Because from this, yeah.
So it reminds me of a saying that we had in hotels. We used to say, you can't solve today's guests' problems tomorrow. So when you talk about people who've come through, and some amazing people who have come through working in that environment in hotels, where you've got a guest in front of you who has an issue or a problem right now, and your attention and focus needs to be in that moment right now, and that extends to, you know, recognizing that VIP that's coming through the door, or recognizing a family with a child that's struggling and maybe needs to get to a room a bit quicker than someone else, and it's being able to operate in that moment and respond to things in that moment. Far too often in the corporate world, we see problems shelved for the next meeting or the next committee or the next round of decision making, and around it goes, and there's just not that urgency to deal with what's in front of us right now.
And it's almost like sometimes we reserve these, you know, sharing appreciation for a special occasion, whereas in hotels particularly, we, you know, sharing gratitude and saying thank you and making people feel appreciated was just a way of life. And it's almost like it was something we did as second nature without thinking about it. And this is the simplicity of what's missed quite commonly in organizational cultures, where we've gotten so busy, we've lost sight of the importance of it. And sometimes we can fall guilty of brushing it off as, you know, do we really need to be doing all of this stuff? Because people have got a job description, they know what they should be doing. Do we really need to be thanking people as frequently as this, you know?
Yeah, there's a problem with most job descriptions. They don't talk about relationships, I find. They're mainly a list of tasks. I've helped most of my clients shift away from job descriptions and have them clarify roles and make sure that relationships are front and center. It's like, this is not rocket science, and yet it's not the common thing. You know, we've known, I first came across this, I'm trying to think of I think it was the Japanese industrialist, Izukawa, I think. He said, and I read this probably in the late 70s, and it stayed with me. and it's still fresh in my heart and mind today. He said, the customer is whoever gets your work next. And it kind of still hangs there, doesn't it? Because that's a truism, if there ever was one, about customer service. You know, the customer is whoever gets your work next. And so for me, that was when the idea of, you know, of my employees being my customers. And when I started seeing them in the early days of my corporate life, when I started seeing my employees as my customers, it changed everything. And the more I treated them with respect and dignity and gratitude and appreciation and so on, the more they did the same for our customers who were paying the money. And it always struck me, this is really simple, and yet it isn't for lots of folk.
No, and I think you've touched on a really important aspect of the whole journey there, which is also it's empowerment's critical. And I think when you've got the right people, and if you've done your job well, you've recruited the right people, and you've looked for people who naturally have that willingness to help other people and want to be in a customer-facing environment, then it's a question of, have you given them the tools to do the job? Have you given them the right equipment, the right training, the right resources, the operating procedures, as you said, the position description? But if we've done all that, then surely the next step is to let them go, let them do it, let them be themselves. And that's something where, we're working in Asia now. It's interesting. They're very, they're almost obsessed with the script. That we've given the employees a script to follow, so therefore we've provided great customer service. We've given them a checklist. We've given them what words to say, and you're taking away or hampering the ability for those people to just be themselves and let their personalities shine and trust that they will make good decisions and do the right thing by the customer. And I can tell you, 99 times out of 100, people come to work wanting to do the right thing. Employees don't get out of bed in the morning going, how can I screw it up today?
Right.
They don't. And I believe that you give people the right parameters, give them the tools, give them what they need to do their job well, and then get out of their way, let them do it.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Every one of us is a unique, one of a kind human being. And that should never be lost. You know, when I was researching my book, Changing What's Normal, I discovered that somewhere between 80 and 100 billion people have walked the earth. And as far as we know, never been a duplicate. So to me, that's a reminder that every time I see another human, what I have in front of me is a one of a kind. And that always makes me feel, wow, you know, because it may well be, you know, that I'll never come across this one of a kind human being ever again. And so why wouldn't I make the most of that moment with a one of a kind? Why wouldn't I?
So Peter, you and I worked together on a bunch of really exciting projects for about 10 years, I'd say, almost a decade. And a big part of that was a set of values that we worked on that were all about a way of being rather than a way of doing things, but setting the bar incredibly high in terms of the outcome that we wanted for our employees and for their guests and their customers. But then it was allowing those people to operate within those values, and then encouraging them along the way. And that's where, coming back to that conversation about the WOW Award, it was about, yes, more of that behaviour. That's simply what it was, wasn't it? It was just, yes, there's some recognition for a job well done. More of that, please.
Yeah, and you know, I think a lot of what we did, Paul, and what we still do is show people the way, encourage them with what we're trying to do, and give them full permission to bring their heart to the moment. And I'm always fascinated with where the the line between management and leadership is so frequently confused, where, you know, things can often be harmed inside this environment of management. But, you know, this is probably one of the most important keys of leadership, in giving people the permission and letting them go for it, and not tying them up inside of complicated process and procedure and KPIs and all the rest of it, and grade them on that, but actually just show them, lead them, and let them.
It's almost circular, because it's almost circular, because the positive feedback is like a drug, and they want more of it. So by simply recognizing and rewarding those excellent moments of truth behaviors, it makes that person even more eager to do the right thing, knowing that they have that permission.
Yeah, and ultimately shows what their contribution does and is doing. You know, the impact of their contribution, to however small, however it's insignificant to some, the contribution, unless we actually show people. You know, back to Fred the Cleaner. Fred the Cleaner's contribution inside a culture is no doubt huge, but unless we actually show Fred and explain to Fred, he'd never realize. And his role will stay as a routine set of tasks rather than something that is part of a very precise workings of an amazing team.
I've always seen process as management. You know, 21st century management is about making sure that processes mean it's simple for people to bring their best to their work. Now, of course, processes include policies, procedures, practices, principles, philosophies. They're all processes. And if all of those mean it's simple for people to bring their best to their work, then all that's left, you know, for the leader to do is to show appreciation in the moment.
So that's not to say there's not a place for process, of course, which is where that other gem of consistency comes in, which is another one of our great values. And in order to achieve consistency, we need to have some standard operating procedures. We need to have what we call non-negotiable standards, so that we know how high we're expected to jump. And those non-negotiable standards around things like grooming and presentation, or greetings and communication, so that they set the boundaries and the parameters, so that every single team member, no matter which location, every day, every shift, every person, we can expect this minimum set of behaviors. And that creates consistency, because otherwise you can have a situation where you've got one or two situations which are amazing, and a client comes in on Monday and has an amazing experience, and comes in on Tuesday and it's a different employee and the experience is completely different. I
like it when the non-negotiables have been negotiated. In other words, there's a shared view created by everyone around what they are, rather than an imposed set of rules. So it's negotiated non-negotiables. So
then the conversation needs to begin along the lines of, well, what do we want to be? How good do we want to be, and what does that mean in terms of the outcome that our customers will receive? And how can we achieve that consistently so they receive that outcome every day? So it's the shared view. It's agreeing on ground rules, on values, on sets of behaviours that are acceptable for the community. In this case, the company or the workplace is the community, and then holding each other to account for that. So it's certainly a powerful part of our reward and recognition program, is the ability for peer-to-peer recognition, for one employee to catch one of their colleagues doing something great and actually reward them points in our program just for saying, I really appreciated what you just did for that customer. As managers, we're not always around to see that. So with a few checks and balances in place, we really encourage that immediate peer-to-peer recognition as well.
Excuse me, two wonderful questions. Who are we, and who do we want to become? Now, Peter, I know that in the world of conference speaking, you're known as Mr. Wonderful. So how did this reputation come about? I know the answer to the question, but I thought you might like to share how it came about, because I think it taps into what we're talking about.
Yeah, you know, the title, as you just described, is something that was given to me generously by people from my audiences. And I guess ultimately, towards the end of my corporate days, which finished about 3 years ago, I realized that my sense of wonder that I had distinctly remember as a 6 year old was actually getting stronger as I grown older. So my sense of wonder was, you know, kept growing and growing to the point where I realized that it has become my purpose with sharing and encouraging people to remember their sense of wonder and bringing it, sort of dusting it off and bringing it back to life. So that blended with my message of customer experience and employee experience, all wrapped up inside the flavoring of the most humble, one of the most humble things that lives inside us all, our sense of wonder, which is kind of something that the seriousness of today often covers up. So I suppose it's become almost like my duty, not just my purpose, but to help people dust it off and bring it back to life, because it's pretty complicated out there, and you know, it's not going to become uncomplicated anytime soon. And I think the more that we can remember the simplicity of who we are and what we do and why we do it, will always steer us into something that always shines bright. And this, you know, the simple, humble point of having more fun at work. You know, the sound of laughter inside a workplace is one of the most invigorating things that I remember from my days in hotels. It was something that was encouraged, and great things come from us all when we're in this state of just simple joy, when we can see the good around us. And sometimes, you know, I've often heard organizations say, oh, we haven't got time for fun. We're not here to have fun. This isn't a holiday park.
I've got just reminded me in the September, the first Wednesday in September event where you both have been past guests, and I'll put links to those recordings along with this one. But my guest on the 1st September is Mark Collard, and he's been creating fun in workplaces for 30 odd years or so. And our topic is why you need to take fun in your workplace seriously. Because I think it's, you know, it is an important thing. You know, when you hear a laugh down the corridor, you want to go and find out what happened, don't you?
That's infectious.
It's infectious. It spreads, and nothing better than a laugh with a customer.
Yeah.
Often, I don't know how many times over the years I've seen a laugh solve a customer problem.
Mm. Now, you know, and just to be clear, I'm not talking about, you know, silly laughter and, you know, messing up, fooling around, but the purity of humor and the purity of, and the humility of having fun is what makes work enjoyable. People, we were talking about trust earlier. Laughter and joy really plugs into loyalty. Particularly, it's another reason why people will want to stay, not just team members, but customers as well. And, you know, if we boil all of this down and boil it down and boil it down and boil it down, it all comes back to connection, which is something that I believe is probably one of the top things that everybody is more than ever craving currently. How we connect with each other, how we connect with our customers, how we feel connected in the workplace, how we feel connected at work. I have to say, something brilliant happened to me a couple of weeks ago. It's an old hobby of mine to restore old furniture, and I found this old sideboard online and I purchased it, and I've stripped it all the way back, and I found this special mineral paint that you use for painting furniture. Ordered it from the supplier in Sydney, 2 pots of mineral paint. And I opened the box, and normally there'd just be the printout of the receipt for the purchase. But there was this beautiful handwritten card from the person who supplied the paint, thanking me for buying their paint, wishing me well with my project, and can't wait to see photos of the finished piece. And all that happened in that moment, you know, I was like, before I'd undone the lid of the paint, I was excited to use the paint. And I felt...
And you're going to go back there forever and ever, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to go back there. I've since built up a really good relationship with this paint company, but I feel loyal. I feel appreciated. I love the product. The sideboard is now finished. But it was all boiled down to that moment of connection, and probably cost that person nothing to do it. Might have taken a couple of minutes to write it, but the effect was profound. Now, if we take that and spread that across that kind of feeling across the culture of an organization, you know, this is when breathtaking things happen. But often you'd say, well, we haven't got time for this. Too busy to...
And they can be the simplest things. You know, you just reminded me of a story, checking out of a hotel in Melbourne a few years ago, their wedding anniversary. And so as you do, you check out on a Sunday morning and you get your car brought up from the valet. So you've had your stay, it was all wonderful, you paid the bill, and it's in your mind, it's all over. And as the car's brought up and we sit in the car to drive off, and they're sitting in the center console, 2 little bottles of water, just saying, with our compliments, look forward to seeing you again. And to me, that was just amazing in its simplicity, that the hotel was still taking care of us, even though we'd already left. And it was just a tiny touch. And what did it cost them? A bottle of water maybe cost them 50 cents, maybe $1. You know, so, but I'll never forget that. I've never seen another hotel do it.
I mean, Gerd Leonhard, who's a futurist colleague of mine, he lives in Zurich. I had the great pleasure once, he and I spoke at a major conference in Munich in Germany once, which is one of those memories that I have. It was at the venue. It's been turned into a state-of-the-art venue. It was where the 1972 Olympics were held. But Gerd has this wonderful, he calls it key human indicators, rather than performance indicators. Let's look at key human indicators. And Peter, you've touched on them. Paul, you're touching on them. It's fun, it's laughter, it's gratitude, it's appreciation.
Surprise sometimes. So just that small moment of surprise and delight.
You know, and so ever since that day, it's a decade or so ago, I've found myself talking to clients about, let's forget KPIs, rather let's look at human indicators, key human indicators, and let's try and increase those, and the results will take care of themselves. So we're sort of coming to probably a good end to our conversation. I'm looking for there's been a lot of gems here, but maybe one each to sort of end our time together.
What we've talked about loosely is creating moments, and whether that's creating moments for customers directly, like Peter's story with the paint, or with mine with the water bottles, or creating moments for your employees that therefore sets them up in the right frame of mind to create moments for your customers.
Beautifully said, Paul.
Oh, thank you.
I wish I'd gone before you. Yeah, for me, is one of my favorite words is simplicity, because I think we do overcomplicate things generally in an already complicated environment is the humility within connection. And, you know, never brushing it off as unnecessary or something we haven't got time for. But all of just the great things that come from connection. Conversations that you have in front of someone where you use eye contact. Eye contact had become something I deeply craved when I was working in corporate, because I wasn't getting the eye contact that would fuel my soul, you know. And it's the humility of connection.
I think it's human-centered connection. It's this idea that we're in the presence of another human, and we need to make the most of it. I love a colleague in the UK, Nigel Risner. He says, when you're in the room, be in the room. Jim Rohn had a way of saying it too. He said, wherever you are, be there.
Be there. And, you know, the interesting thing to wrap this thought up here, Ian, is, yeah, all of this stuff has been around since the day of the dawn of time.
Yep.
And I often see, you know, you just look on social media and everybody's kind of chasing the next shiny thing and the next way of doing something, and we've changed this and changed it and all the rest of it. But this stuff has been around since the dawn of time, and it's often the things that we've lost sight of or forgotten about or don't think is as important as it used to be. But now is more, there's never been a time more appropriate right now for humility with our connection.
Absolutely right. And regardless of how long it might take us to be able to deal with viruses in an effective way, it's not going to change the power of a human connection. And I think we need to remember that as we try and find solutions to our current challenges. Humans have always found a way when they look for and see the best in one another.
Yeah.
Wonderful place to end our conversation, gentlemen.
I feel like we could go all day. Actually, I feel like we
could
scratch
but
the surface, and I could quite happily sit back and imagine this was an 8 or 9 hour recording, because I just think we're just it's like we're just getting warmed up.
Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll put this out and about, and we'll gather again sometime soon for maybe to share some stories from our experience. I think that would be wonderful. Let's do that. But it's been a great pleasure, Peter and Paul.
Always a privilege being in your company,
yes.
Gentlemen.
Likewise.